Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head back to Sweden once again for the first time in what feels like a good long while. Now we're going to return to a brewery that's featured on the channel many times before. These guys were one of my local breweries when I was living in Lund in Skåne in the south of the country, and it is most definitely fair to say that this brewery are best known for their different kinds of fruity, juicy, modern, smoothie, whatever you want to call them, sour beers. Now, the beer we're going to have a look at today is one of two beers that was exported over here to Hong Kong, and I've had this one maybe about 2 months or something like that, and I've been meaning to review it for a wee while, but you know, some IPAs kind of got in the way of that, and being busy of course as well. But I've heard this beer is very nice. It's quite similar, I think, to ones that we've had from them before, and I know that the sort of things we can expect from this beer are flavours that this brewery can do very, very well. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one's going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer. Hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head to a little place called Arlöv in Skåne, my home Swedish county as I would call it, which is a little bit, it's kind of in the middle of Lund to the northeast where I used to live and Malmö to the southwest where I spent a lot of time. But that means that we're going to have a look at another beer from Molecule Brewery, and this time we are going to have a look at one from the Elmeleven brand. So these guys are pretty damn awesome, I have to say. The particular beer is called Frequent Flyers. It comes in at 6.5% ABV, and this is another fruity, juicy, smoothie, modern, whatever you want to call it, sour beer. They're describing this one as a blackberry, strawberry, coconut crumble sour beer, this one. So yeah, this will be another red sour. The other one we reviewed from these guys fairly recently was the Government Denies Knowledge, and that was exported over here with a few different things from Nerd Brewing as well. And I've got another one from Nerd Brewing that I'll look at in a couple of videos time too. I had a look at one of the barley wines from them quite recently, which was very nice. But yeah, always cool to have a look at new beers from Elmeleven. I always used to review one beer from these guys at least per month through the local releases in Systembolaget, and that is certainly something that I miss. But yeah, this one, Frequent Flyers, 6.5% smoothie sour from the wonderful Elmeleven, part of the Molecule Brewing Group in Arlöv, Skåne in the south of Sweden. Let's crack on then and see what this beer has in store for us. So, as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Elmeleven before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Swedish playlist along with a number of other things. That's being added to whenever I get the opportunity these days, not as often as I would like of course, but yeah, make sure you check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, because there are some very, very interesting things on the channel these days. But yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Elmeleven once again. So, Elmeleven, as I've mentioned to you before, originally had their roots in Malmö in Skåne in the south of Sweden, and this company was founded by Anders Kvist. And Anders is a lovely guy, very recognisable, long red hair, very colourful tattoos. Yeah, if you see him, you'll love this guy. It really is great. But basically, he started his brewing project a few years ago back in 2016, and he says that he views brewing his beer as a sort of artistic expression, and his interest in beer started when his friend bought him what he called a quote non-industrial lager, and he was just blown away by, you know, this is kind of what beer could be. But his girlfriend bought him a cheap beer brewing kit soon after this, where you basically add the water, and it just got him thinking that, you know, you must be able to do this in a much better way. And it was this, and investigating this, that really pushed him into proper home brewing. So he took part in various competitions with these beers, and then he joined the Minuset -1 collective in the basement of Bishop's Arms Gustav Adolfs torg in Malmö, where I used to work until things went. So yeah, that was another interesting story there. But it was here in the Bishop's Arms where Anders sold his first beers. So production was very small over the first few years, just a few thousand litres, but a while later he started brewing in the Nerd, Chad and Lilla Ulfabriken brewery in Rosengård in Malmö, and he had several Systembolaget releases over 2020. In the early days these guys were brewing some IPAs, but of course the focus very quickly changed to brewing sour beers, and Anders does say that he wants to try a few other things with the brewery in the future, but I'm not sure whether they will brew different styles under the Elmeleven brand going forward, because in March of 2021 a new collective called Molecule was announced. This includes Elmeleven, Nerd Brewing and Chad Beer, and they've got their brewery in Arlöv, which like I say is about halfway between Malmö and Lund, and they start off there with a 1500 litre brew kit. But out of these three brands, basically Molecule, they are releasing stouts and barley wines and things like that under the Nerd Brewing brand. The IPAs and lagers are released under the Chad Beer brand, and then the kind of sour beers, the smoothie sours and stuff like this, are released under the Elmeleven brand. But it is Anders who does pretty much all of the brewing. The other two guys kind of design the recipes for the Chad Beer and the Nerd Brewing stuff, and of course Anders takes part in that as well. But yeah, Anders is the main brewer for the Molecule company. But the name Elmeleven for the sour beer brand comes from where Anders lived, which was Almbacksgatan 11. So Alm translates into English as elm, as in the type of tree. Elva is 11 in Swedish. So yeah, this is just something that stuck with Anders from his home brewing days. But as of April 2024, when we're filming this review for you, these guys have produced 100 different kinds of beer according to Untappd under the Elmeleven brand. And like I say, pretty much all of the beers with the Elmeleven name are, smoothie sour beers. So yeah, that is everything I can tell you about Elmeleven for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. But yeah, let's go on and have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. So as you can see here, the artwork on this one is pretty wonderful, as you're always going to get from Anders. I think I'm pretty sure he still does the artwork on these beers actually. But there you can see the Elmeleven Rocket, which I think is great. Plain gold top on the can there. 440 milliliter can, this one. I think I paid about 100 Hong Kong dollars for this, which is quite a bit more than it would have been in Sweden. You would have paid about 40 or $50 or something like this. It would be about 55 Swedish kroner, which is probably about 50 Hong Kong dollars. So paid double the price for this one, but it is an import beer here, which makes a bit of a difference, of course. But yeah, as I say, this one, I'm pretty sure I bought this one at Gur Beer in the One Mall in Chimsachui. So yeah, they've always getting an interesting selection of like Danish and Swedish things every so often. But yeah, as I said earlier, this one is a blackberry strawberry coconut crumble sour, 6.5% EBV. I don't think there's anything else we can really say about this beer. Let's just get it out into the glass and see how we get on. I'm just going to invert the can a couple of times though, because I know what these beers are like. This thing will probably have, with the time it's been in the fridge and things, it probably will have a little bit of sort of sediment and things. And in a smoothie sour, you do want it to be very thick stuff. So yeah, let's get this guy out into the glass and see what we have. Ooh, I've missed these beers, I really have. Right, so I think for the moment we'll leave it like that. So yeah, you can see before the head completely disappears, this thing poured with just about a quarter finger of a frothy kind of pink tinted head. That has of course faded away to be pretty much nothing. The Elmeleven beers, from what I remember, some of them did retain their heads fairly decently for a little bit, but I think with the time that this one's been in the can and stuff, and the fact that it's an import, blah blah blah, just the time means that the head is not going to stick around for very, very long. But you saw that fade away. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, and a few little ones coming up toward the surface there. But yeah, the way that this one, the appearance of this beer is kind of pretty much what I would expect compared to the other things I've had from them before. So you can see that this beer, it's poured. The colour of this one's quite interesting. It's almost like a sort of burgundy, Heart of Midlothian football shirt colour. I've often used that descriptor before, but yeah, kind of burgundy, red winey type colour, this one. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. 1, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. 2, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugar is caramelised, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour as well. And when it comes to the kind of modern smoothie sour beers like this, the type of fruits that you use are the things that are going to determine the colour of the beer for the most part, to be honest with you. So yeah, the black currants, and what's the other one in this? Blackberries, sorry, and strawberry. It's probably the blackberries that are giving you most of the colour in this one, but the strawberries will contribute to that as well. But the haziness in this beer is probably down to the oat content and the wheat content too. But yeah, all in all, this beer is pretty much what I would expect appearance wise when it comes to this. I don't think there's anything overly surprising about it. It looks great, and yeah, I really do like how it goes together. Yeah, I don't know if we really need to say much more about that. If you shine the light through it, you can see it does show you a little bit of a kind of lightness, but as I say, the colour is pretty much what you expect. Lovely little bit of haziness to it from the oat and the wheat. But yeah, as I've said before, when it comes to these kind of smoothie sours that you get from Elmeleven, quite often their flavour profiles are quite straightforward. But yeah, they're just beautifully done beers, so you can't knock them at all. So yeah, I think we've said everything we really need to about the appearance of this one. A lovely kind of burgundy colour, not much visible carbonation. You can see the head has disappeared in this. So yeah, let's have a wee look at that nose and see how we go. We'll go on to the aroma section of this video. Oh yeah. Yeah, this is awesome. It's a little bit of nostalgia for me. As I say, I've not had an Elmeleven beer in quite a wee while, and I love these ones. You know, I always used to enjoy Elmeleven Day every month. But yeah, the aroma of this beer is very, very nice. So for me, the backbone of this beer, this one kind of gives you everything you'd expect, to be quite honest with you. You've got this lovely big sort of creamy, smoothie, yogurty type note out of it. You've got the juicy fruits, and you've got a wee bit of that kind of green component, placebo. It's a beautiful, beautiful smelling beer, this one. As I say, it's quite straightforward in terms of its aroma, and I'm sure it kind of will be with the flavour profile as well, but it's just so well done, which is, you know, basically my experience with Elmeleven before. I was curious as to whether this one would have a little bit of rye and stuff like that in it, but it just says, yeah, malty barley, malted wheat, oats, stuff like this, and brewed at Molecule in Malmö. So yeah, so I actually could have thought I could smell a wee bit of rye in it, but apparently not. So yeah, let's just break the aroma of this beer down then and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth before we taste the thing. So the backbone of this beer, there is a little bit of bready character to this one. I mean, you can smell a little bit of that kind of fresh, white bready hedgehog bread crust coming out of this one, which I think is great. So always love that. On the yeah, so you got that fresh hedgehoggy bread crust in there. There's a little touch of woodiness to it, but not a lot. I am getting wee elements of like cracker out of this one as well, and again, that's quite minimal. But above that, there's quite a lot of white bready character. It has got this kind of, pardon me, almost vanilla sponge type quality to it, which I think is very, very nice as well. Yeah, the vanilla sponge cake that you get out of this is really nice. It actually reminds me of these cakes that are quite popular here in Hong Kong. I think they're just called flat cakes. But yeah, there's a lot of vanilla comes out of this one for me, but you also get this kind of petit filou fruit yogurt type thing coming out of this one. If you think about Muller Corner yogurts or something like this, I don't know if I've never really looked for those out here in Hong Kong right enough, but yeah, you get the kind of Muller Corner yogurty type character coming out of this one, like a vanilla yogurt, but then within that you can smell a little bit of the kind of oaty creaminess coming out of the beer. There is a little bit of that almost milkshakey type quality as well. As I say, a lot of vanilla in this one for me, but there is a slight degree of sweetness to this beer as well. I would say, yeah, there's a wee bit of like Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch coming out of this one. So yeah, Werther's Original butter candy butterscotch for sure. There's also a wee bit of, I do get a little hint of biscuit out of this one, in all honesty. So yeah, the way everything pieces together in this beer, I think, is really, really quite interesting. So yeah, I think we've covered everything we need to say about the malt base. It's one of these big, typical sort of yogurty, creamy, smooth malt bases, of course, with just a wee bit of a bready character underneath. But yeah, underneath that, I think I think there's not too much else to say. As I've mentioned before, when it comes to these modern sour beers, there's a little bit of a debate amongst brewers whether you should use hops. You know, back in the day, and with the kind of more old school sour beers, what they do is they use older hops that have lost a little bit of their alpha acid potency, and the reason behind that is that if they are not, if they're not overly, the bitterness from the hops would detract a little bit from the sourness of the beer. With modern sour beer brewers, quite often they're using fruit as adjuncts, and that's going to suppress a bit of the green component anyway. So you have this big debate about whether you actually should use hops or whether you shouldn't. You know, it can go either way, of course. But yeah, the aroma that comes out of this one is, it has a little bit of this more kind of placebo character to it. I get a bit of grassiness out of it. There's maybe a little touch of earthiness in there and a wee bit of floral character. But yeah, I'm pretty sure, I know Anders doesn't really like to use hops in these beers. He doesn't see the point in it, he said. Or he can see the point, he just prefers not to. I forget exactly, I'm not going to put words in the guy's mouth. But yeah, you still get a little bit of a grassy placebo out of this beer anyway, but quite a lot of Swedish brewers who are doing these modern smoothie sour beers don't tend to use the hops. That's where I was going with this whole tangent. But anyway, for me with this beer, you still get a little bit of a kind of slightly grassy note out of this one, but otherwise it's all about the fruity characters. And I mean, for me, the fruity side of this one, you can smell the juicy strawberry for sure. I think Swedish strawberries, from what I remember, Swedish strawberries are a little bit softer in their character. The Scottish ones have a wee bit more kind of punchiness to them, I would say. But the blackberry in this one, you certainly get a wee bit of sharpness out of that in the top of the nose, and of course you're getting a few other kind of fruity characters coming out of this too. So yeah, the way that just all of that pieces together in this one, I think, is quite interesting. So yeah, it's the aroma. This one's pretty much what you'd expect. You've got the blackberry in there, the juicy strawberry, and a few other kind of like curranty notes under this one. I get quite a little bit of red currant out of this beer, in all honesty. Then you've got that big yogurty, cakey sort of base, which is what you want. It's a beautiful smelling beer, this one. As I always say, take a little bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck into it. But I think it is about time that we have a taste of this one and see what it's all about. So yeah, let's do it. This one is the Frequent Flyers, a 6.5% smoothie sour from the wonderful Elmeleven, part of the Molecule Brewery Collective in Arlöv, Malmö, Skåne, Sweden. Let's get stuck into this. They're calling it blackberry strawberry coconut crumble. I didn't get much coconut out of the aroma, so we'll see if it comes out in the flavour more. But let's get stuck in. Sláinte, skål, cheers. Yeah, that's pretty damn good, I have to say. Yeah. Ooh, I've missed these. I really have missed these. Out here in Hong Kong, when it comes to smoothie sours, the one that's really accessible is One Drop. One Drop Brewing are doing some really, really nice kind of smoothie sours from Australia. And their ones are even kind of creamier and sort of smoother and sweeter almost than this one. These ones, I think I'd kind of forgotten this about Elmeleven, or maybe I'd become desensitized to it. And it shows you how your palate kind of varies depending on where you go and what beers you're drinking and stuff like this. But I'd forgotten that these, having not had an Elmeleven in quite a wee while, this one's got quite an impact flavour to it, and it really has a bit more kind of sharpness and things. Whereas, if I'd been drinking one of these beers a month along with the Elmeleven, along with the duck ponds and the fermenterinas and stuff, I wouldn't have really thought anything of that. So yeah, it's interesting to see how your palate changes based on what you're actually drinking in different places. So yeah, a lot sharper and tarter than I remember having had from Elmeleven before. That's interesting. but still very, very enjoyable, I have to say. So big thumbs up to the guys at Elmeleven for this. And as I say, we managed to get, just checking the bottom of the can, there's not really any sediment stuck to the bottom of that. We managed to get all of it into the glass. But yeah, this beer's kind of giving you everything you'd expect. It's got a lovely kind of sweetness in the middle. When I think about, and this, as I say, this could just be based on what I'm drinking now, but this beer does feel a little bit lighter in its mouthfeel than some of the other ones we've had from Elmeleven in the past. And even when I think about the Government Denies Knowledge one that we had, I felt that was a bit thicker than this. But I think they're describing this one more as a kind of pastry sour rather than a smoothie sour. I'm pretty sure the other one was a smoothie, and you know, you do expect a slightly thicker mouthfeel with the smoothie ones, because I think there's more oats and things like that in them. This one, as a pastry sour, you probably would expect just a little bit less mouthfeel. But that said, even if this one is a pastry sour, it is definitely pushing toward that kind of smoothie sour end of the spectrum. So yeah, it's good stuff regardless. You know, I'm maybe just overthinking this a little bit, but all in all, this beer is definitely on a par with what we've had from Elmeleven in the past. So let's just break this beer down and describe it for you a wee bit more in depth, if you like. But as I say, I think this is one of the lighter mouthfeel, pardon me, Elmelevens that we've reviewed. So yeah, let's go to the middle third of the palate and start off there as we always do. So yeah, backbone of this beer then. For me, the backbone of the beer, you've got a lovely little bit of like a very fresh, white, bread crusty character there. That is absolutely the backbone of the beer. If you move a little bit further forward on that middle third of your tongue, you've got a wee bit of, you do get a little slight touch of woodiness out of this one, but I'd say that's quite minimal. Teeny little bit of like crackery dryness there as well. But yeah, above the bread crust, there's quite an airy, fluffy, very fresh, white bready character coming out of this one. And yeah, the way that goes together, I think, is really very, very nice. So yeah, I don't know if there's too much else to say about the kind of very base of the beer, but above that layer, you start to get the kind of cakey notes out of this one. So for me, there is very much like a kind of vanilla sponge cakey character sitting above the white bread there, and then you can feel a slightly more dense but very smooth wheaty white bready layer in it. You know, I think there is a wee bit of coconut in this one. Within the kind of cakey spongy layer and the white bready layer, you can feel that little bit of coconut come out further into the aftertaste. But I'm getting, yeah, a mix of like coconut and almost vanilla type flavour out of this one, which is quite interesting. So yeah, the way all of that pieces together, I think, is really, really nice. But yeah, on top of the kind of smooth wheaty layer in this one, you start to get the kind of oaty notes out of this beer, and the oaty character really gives you this sort of petit filou. It really gives you this kind of petit filou yogurt type thing. So yeah, a lot of that coming out of the beer, which I think is really interesting. So yeah, petit filou, yogurty type character mixed in with the oats, but then in the dead centre of your palate, you get a little bit of that Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy thing sort of coming out of it. So all of that is very, very nice. I think that covers the malty side of it. The only other thing I would say is that into the aftertaste, you get a bit more vanilla, a bit more kind of sponge cake, and a wee bit of that coconutty type character coming out of it. So yeah, I like that with this one. Let's go to the back third of the palate, and as I've often said, the back third of your palate is going to give you very similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. But yeah, border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of brown bread in the base, the white bread on top. Then the base of that front third of your palate, you've got a little bit more of a you do have a little bit more of that kind of You've got a little bit more of what I would term that kind of bread crusty base, but it just feels that little bit drier. As you go on top of that, you can feel a wee touch of an almost crackery layer. Then you've got that very fluffy, airy, white bready character in there, which feels really light and airy, and you get a little bit of the coconut and the vanilla mixed in with that too. Then you get a wee bit of the kind of vanilla spongy character and a wee bit of the more dense wheaty character. You can feel that bit of smooth, dry, wheaty bread sitting on top of that. Then above everything else, you've got the kind of yeasty side of the beer just making its way out. So let's look at the yeasty side of this beer then. So the yeasty side of this beer for me is quite kind of straightforward. It feels just like a soft white bready character in there. So the centre's like soft, the centre's maybe a bit more of a kind of sponge cake. Around it is a soft white bread, and there's a wee touch of that almost like cake crust or something like that on the edge. But yeah, that sits on top of the back third of the palate, and definitely you can feel the flavour on the back third of your palate is a lot taller than as you move further forward into the middle third of your tongue. It just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So yeah, the way everything pieces together in this beer, I think, is really very, very nice. So it gets a big thumbs up from me. That covers the malty and yeasty side of it. Let's go on to the hoppy placebo and the fruity side of it. So yeah, as I said, this beer, you can tell from the smoothness on the side of your palate, it doesn't have hops in it. That's quite obvious. But yeah, back corners of your palate, you've got a little bit of you do have a little bit of a slight earthiness in there as you move further forward, a little touch herbal, and as you push further forward toward the kind of front corners of your palate, you do get a little touch of floral note and a wee bit of grassiness. That's pretty obvious in this one. But yeah, if you go to that front third of your palate, this is where all the fruity character from the beer is coming out. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of bready build up in there, wee bit of like white bread in the base and the sort of sponge cakey character above that. But the base of the front third of your palate, you've got a bit of the cake crust, the kind of soft white bread and the cakey sort of thing, and then above all of that, you've got that nice juicy fruity character from this one, and a lot of it is obviously adjunctive fruit because there aren't hops in the beer. So for me, the strawberry is kind of forming the base of the fruity side of things, and the blackberry is the thing that's really giving it the tartness. So yeah, the way that this one goes together in that sense is really nice, and you can feel some of the strawberry juiciness spreading down the sides of your palate, and just the sharpness of the blackberry sitting on top of that. So yeah, the way all of that goes together, I think, is really very, very nice, and that gets a thumbs up from me. So yeah, I like the way that I do like the way all of that goes together in this one. But as I say, the impact flavour of this one for me was quite punchy, just I think because I've not had an Elmeleven in a good wee while. But yeah, solid beer this one, but from memory I would say that it's a little bit lighter in its mouthfeel compared to some of the other Elmelevens that we've had previously. But still, I really, really like this one, and it gets a big thumbs up from me. I've missed the Elmeleven. So yeah, I think at this point we can move on and talk about the mouthfeel. So for me, this beer is like top end to mid bodied, bottom end to full bodied, probably more bottom end to full bodied for me. The carbonation is quite smooth in this one. It does have that typical kind of creamy, smoothie, sour type note to it, but you get a wee bit of that dryness coming out into the aftertaste that you expect of the pastry sour. Like I say, this is not the creamiest of Elmelevens that I can remember, certainly. And it could just be that my point of reference has changed with One Drop. I've been drinking a lot of those One Drop beers from Botany and Sydney. Of course, I'd love to see these guys do a collaboration together. That would be awesome, actually. But that would be the dream, Elmeleven and One Drop. But yeah, for me, IBU count in this beer will probably be technically 0, but you've probably got 4 or 5 IBUs, something like that. The impact flavours on this one do have a little bit of sharpness and tartness there, mainly from the blackberry. But yeah, the malt base, wee bit of smooth dryness underneath, smoothness in the middle, and a little touch of sweetness on top. But yeah, all in all, another very, very solid beer, this one. Definitely slightly more pastry sour leaning than some of the other Elmelevens I remember. Not quite as thick and creamy and smoothie sour leaning as we've had, but still very, very good, and definitely in keeping with the standards that I would expect of Elmeleven. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. This was the Frequent Flyers, a blackberry, strawberry, coconut crumble sour, a pastry smoothie sour kind of hybrid, if you like, from the wonderful Elmeleven, part of the Molecule Brewing Group in Untappd near Malmö in Skåne in the south of Sweden. Nice to return to these guys after what has felt like a very, very long time. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Elmeleven as well, and we will no doubt return to these guys again at some point in the very near future. But until then, Slanja, Skål, cheers, check out my social media, check out Elmeleven's social media, and I'll see you guys later on. Hopefully we can get some more Swedish reviews on the channel again over the next little while. Ciao just now.